Yep. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the season 2 premiere of Help Desk Live. This is episode 15. I'm Hammad, senior member of Help Desk, and I'm hosting with Jen Shepard over here. We have a stellar guest joining us today, Mr. Rod C. Keller. He has been president of Segway Inc. since May 2013. Mr. Keller is a veteran executive with an extensive sales and marketing background, with over 25 years of experience in the tech industry. Hello.
Hello, Hammad. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for being here, Rod. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, I guess one of my first questions for you would be, do you mind walking us through your...
Yes.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the season 2 premiere of Help Desk Live.
Hold on one
this is
second.
episode 15.
I'm
I'm
gonna
Hammad.
I think it's muted now.
Alrighty, we're good again. Alrighty.
Okay.
So, yeah, one of my first questions for you would be, do you mind, not a question, but yeah, do you mind walking us through your career path a little bit? Like, how were you as a student in high school? And did you ever see yourself being a CEO of a company like Segway? Or, yeah.
You know, I didn't think about it a whole lot. I loved sports so much in high school that I played sports, and I finished high school in a really small little town. And then I went to college, and then I didn't realize how much fun college could be. But I think as I got toward the end of my college career, I was very excited about graduating and jumping into the workforce. I think once I got out and I realized how exciting business was and some of the companies I worked for, I got pretty excited about climbing the ladder, so to speak.
So what would you say was that driving force? Like, was it like certain classes you were taking then, or?
I think it was the subject material that I got interested in. Once I got to college, are you talking about college or high school?
I guess both.
Yeah, when I got to college, I started off as an accounting major, but then I became close friends with the professor of marketing, and wound up changing to marketing. And then while I was in college, I had some jobs that were sales jobs, which sort of complemented what I was learning in marketing. And that's really sort of the path I started when I got out of college. It was kind of initially starting in a sales role and then moving through the ranks of the other functions.
Alrighty. So I guess my next question for you would be a little story that you could possibly share with us. So Ms. Shepard was telling me when she met you for the first time, you told her how you worked for a company that played a major role in the development of an innovative product by Apple. Would you care to share the story?
Yeah, at the time I was the senior vice president of Toshiba's what was called the storage device division, and Toshiba made about 40% of all the hard disk drives that went in all the notebooks in the world, and then they made the optical drives. Originally it was CD, and then it later became DVD. And Japanese companies are a little different than U.S. companies in the sense that U.S. companies try to find a gap in the marketplace, and then they'll go develop a product or a service to go fill that gap. Whereas many of the Japanese companies are more technology companies. They go develop new technology and then try to find a home or an application for it. So in the fall of 2000, Toshiba Japan had developed a really small hard disk drive that was a unique form factor. Nobody else in the world had it, not IBM, not Fujitsu, Samsung, nobody else was making it. And they shipped me a lot of them, 180,000 of them. And they said, go sell these. Well, it was most of the people that were buying hard drives in any quantity were IBM, Apple, Compaq, HP, Digital Equipment Corporation, Dell, and nobody was interested. Not a single company I went and talked to, yet I was swimming in inventory. In January of 2001, I had a meeting with Apple at their headquarters up in Cupertino, California. And at the time, we were selling Apple what was called a slot load DVD. All the notebooks have them from Apple. You know, you stick a DVD in there or a CD, and it grabs it and pulls it in. That's what's called slot load DVD. And Jeff Williams at the time was a senior VP of worldwide procurement. And he said, give me a copy of the presentation. It was in PowerPoint. Well, I had saved the presentation to that little bitty hard drive that plugged into what was called a PCMCIA slot. That was a common industry standard slot for plugging peripherals in notebooks back then. So I saved it to that. I pulled it out. I handed him the drive. He said, "What is this?" I said, I immediately went into the story. It's a mechanical drive. It has a storage. It has a head in it. It has a motor. It's not flash, but it's a true mechanical hard disk drive. That was in January of '01. A couple of weeks went by, he called me, he said, Rod, can you send me 5 or 6 of those little hard drives? I said, what are you doing? He said, I can't tell you yet. So about a month went by, he called me again, he said, can you send me a system engineer and a few more drives? And I said, what are you doing? He said, I still can't tell you yet. He called me, he said, where are you building these? I said, well, we're actually building them in our factory in the Philippines. He said, well, I want to come audit your factory in the Philippines. They came and audited our factory in the Philippines. And then in July, they notified us that we were the sole source on a new device that they were launching in April at Macworld in Tokyo. And I went to that meeting, and Jobs was there, of course. And we were the sole source for the first 2 years at the launch of the iPod. And I went from couldn't give these small 1.8-inch hard disk drives away, that we had to open 2 additional factories just to keep up with the demand we had for the initial iPod. And then this past March, I was back in California for the 20th anniversary of a big event at Toshiba. And it just so happened Jeff Williams was there, invited by Toshiba, since Apple was such a huge customer. And I saw him, he said, Rod, he goes, you know how much business we've done on that little hard drive? I said, no. He goes, we've done $5 billion since then.
Wow.
So I went from I couldn't give them away to I couldn't make enough of them. And when Steve Jobs wrote his book, there's actually a story in the book he talks about. He said when Jeff Williams walked out of his office and he went in to see a guy named Rubenstein who was in charge of product development, he and Rubenstein talked about it, went in to tell Jobs, said, hey, I just got out of a meeting. I think I may have found the storage for the first iPod. So kind of interesting how things work sometimes.
Wow. Yeah.
That story blew me away when we met, and
like when she told me, I was like, wow, like I can't, yeah.
I mean, we talk about innovation in schools, and that's what we want for our students. So from an executive point of view, what is your advice for young people like Hammad who are getting ready to graduate and I believe pursue major
something in tech? Yeah, something.
Yeah, they want to go into technology, and you hear that word innovation thrown around in so many different industries. So, like I said, from an executive point of view, what does innovation look like? What does it mean? And how could a young person like Hammad get involved with finding innovation, something like the iPod that completely revolutionized the music industry in the way we know it today?
Yeah. Hammad, I would tell you this. Well, it sounds like you've already picked something you're passionate about. And that's what I would tell anyone that's coming out of school is, pick something you're passionate about for 2 reasons. One, you're going to be doing it for a long time. And secondly, if you're passionate about it, you have a far better chance of being better than anyone else that isn't passionate about it. Second thing is, I'll tell you this, coming out of school, don't chase the money immediately. Go someplace where you're going to get a rock-solid foundation. If you're interested in technology, you may want to look at a company like Cisco, Intel, depending on if you're interested in the hardware or the software side. But get a rock-solid foundation, because if you get that, that will serve you for the rest of your career. The other thing I might mention to you is don't let yourself get handcuffed by putting yourself in a situation where you have to work in a certain job to make enough money to go live the lifestyle you've got while you're, I'll say, sub 30. And I'll tell you why. Because you may come up with a fantastic idea, and if you've got a big burden, a big overhead that would require you to make a fairly large amount of money, it might be hard to go chase that dream. And you may learn enough in your first 6, 8, 10 years that you can go pursue that. And I think there will continue to be, if you go read Moore's Law, he talks about the doubling of the power in an Intel processor, for example. But there's a book you should go read called The Innovator's Dilemma. And it talks about how you deal with disruptive technology and how you use it in such a way so it doesn't kill the existing business you've got, but you can use that to leapfrog some of your competitors. It's a great book called The Innovator's Dilemma.
Alrighty, cool. I mean, you talked a lot about skills and, that's something to look out for. Like, what are the types of skills, that maybe I should work on from now, Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one of them, but from the short time we've been on this call, it looks like you already got it.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
One of them is, don't ever pass up an opportunity where you get to present in front of other people. Because what you never know is who in that audience at some point may go, you know, I remember, who was that young guy's name? What was it? He presented to us 2 years ago. We're looking for somebody to go open our office in Bangalore, or we want somebody to open a new office in Santa Clara or Tokyo. And those are opportunities where people go, wow, what a sharp person. I would tell you, don't pass that up. Also, I would tell you this. At some point in your career, if you're working for a large enough company, there may be an opportunity for you to work overseas. And the sooner you get some international experience, if an opportunity comes up and you're competing against someone else for it and you have it and they don't, that's a big plus. And the fact that you understand not just the business culture but the social culture in other parts of the world are big pluses. Because as you climb the ladder, if you ever want to be a C-level executive, if you don't have that, you're going to have that at some point. Because you need to understand what goes on in Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, and the Americas too.
I have a question for him.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I'm just so intrigued by your career path and just the fact that I'm so glad I didn't pass up the opportunity to introduce myself to you and strike up that conversation with you when I did. And all I heard was the keyword Segway and DBA. And I said, how are you affiliated with Segway? And so long story short, here you are. Could you share, do you remember your first international business experience? Because I'm intrigued by that. Could you share with us that?
Yeah. It was, I'm trying to remember, it was in the early 90s. I was on a project. I really got into high tech with Epson America, the Japanese company that makes primarily printers and projectors. It was in the early 90s. I went to Tokyo and I met with some of the executives in Japan, and I was, kind of in awe of what was going on there. I spent a lot more time from 96 on when I took over the storage device division, because I was the top American, and I went to Tokyo once a month for 8 years. I ran worldwide sales for the consumer division of Cisco, which was called Linksys. You might remember Linksys, little wireless routers. They since sold them to Belkin, and I ran worldwide there. I spent more time in Europe than I did anywhere because we didn't have near the market share in Europe that we had in the Americas. It's just spending time there, getting to know executives, getting to know the business culture there. Even within the countries within the European Union, the Germans do business very differently. The way that consumers think in Germany is not anywhere like the way that the Brits think in the UK. And Scandinavia is very different. Middle East is very different. China is totally different. You can learn, of course, some of this by reading if you dive in, but the best way to learn is just experience it.
So, I mean, this kind of going back to a previous thing that we talked about. So, would you like to talk about your first job that you ever had? You said building a foundation for yourself. Where was your foundation?
I got my first job through the placement office on campus at the university I graduated from. And I moved to Houston where the company was. I remember I graduated December 19th, 1981. I started January 4th, so I didn't have much time off. But it was in the steel industry. And in that time, in the early 80s, Houston had not really diversified itself much. It was very, very highly dependent upon energy, oil. And so in the company I was working for supplied the oil industry. I got a lot. It was only there for about a little over a year, but I got tremendous training in a short period of time because the company was over 100 years old. It had 26 offices in the U.S., and it helped me a lot. It wouldn't have hurt me probably to stay a little longer, but I called an old girlfriend's dad when the energy industry went south, and the way they kind of measure the energy industry in Texas anyway is by the number of offshore oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, and as they went south, so did the business. And I got very lucky. I called an old girlfriend's father, and I said, Mr. Penrod, I don't think I'm going to stay in the energy industry. And he said, well, my boss, who just left General Electric after 32 years, was hired by a company called Epson. And I thought, oh, yeah, they make salt. I thought it was Epsom salts. And it wasn't. And I got very lucky because I sort of caught the wave of the PC industry, because about 14 months earlier was when IBM first announced their very first PC. Prior to IBM announcing the PC, there was Atari, Commodore. Apple was considered kind of a toy. But I was fortunate that I really kind of caught the growth curve, which lasted for a good 10 or 12 years in the PC industry, and that was a great experience.
Tell him that.
So I'm a PC guy, right? So
At an Apple school.
an Apple school.
Apple distinguished school. He's a big
Believe me, I'm a big Mac Air user now.
Okay, user, yeah, yeah. What made you turn?
He asked, "What made you turn,
Yeah.
Rod?"
I'll tell you what made me turn, God, I hope nobody. I hope if you put this on the web, I pray Mr. Nishida, who's the chairman of Toshiba Corp, doesn't see
Streaming
this.
live on YouTube as we speak.
Great. Well, I mean, all I used was Windows my whole career for obvious reasons. I was working for a company that sold Windows-based, PCs. My son, when he was about 10 years old, only had so much desk space in his room, and that was back when Apple, I don't know if they still make the iMac or not, but it was small. It was a small all-in-one, and it didn't take up much space. And as I learned their operating system to help him, I was like, this is really easy. And after I left Toshiba, he got older, so he went to his first Mac, and he went to I guess it was a PowerBook and a MacBook Pro. And I'm probably I had 2 MacBook Pros, and now on my Mac Air, I've got the new, Apple 6, and the latest generation iPad, and I love Apple. I watch more Apple TV than I do regular TV. I got to tell you, I gave Jobs a hard time shortly after the iPod launched, because then they launched iTunes, and I didn't really believe that a completely closed architecture, an entirely closed environment and ecosystem was going to work, because it was a huge risk, because that's what they did in the beginning. You think about it, there weren't any Apple clones. There was one company called Power Computing, but it got the plug pulled on it. Whereas IBM had, IBM architecture was a completely wide open number of PC compatibles. But boy, they pulled it off. And I mean, that's why they're the largest market cap of any company in the world right now, over $600 billion.
What was Steve Jobs like? Because you did.
I was like, yeah.
Very direct, very to the point, very opinionated, no baloney, very, very strong opinions. Respected people that challenged him. If you had the facts, you better have the facts. Jobs was involved with Segway, actually, in the beginning, from what my conversations with Dean Kamen. But he, no doubt a visionary. And, Tim Cook was at Compaq before he went to Apple many years ago, and we did business with him when I was at Toshiba. So far, Tim's done looks like a pretty good job, but boy, he's got some big shoes to fill.
Oh, yeah.
I know. You said you can jump in at any time.
Oh, yeah.
You talked about calling an old girlfriend's dad. So advice for Hammad, and hopefully other young people will watch this, regarding networking and the importance of that in a person's career.
Well, I will tell you, it only gets more important as you get older, Hammad. And the reason why, I can't think of a job that I've had in the last 20 years that didn't come as a result of my network, not recruiters. It was someone I either met through business or someone that had worked for me at one time, but and particularly if you ever are looking for a job, or if you're looking for people, there's a good chance someone in your network may know someone. I can't emphasize the importance enough of building a very broad network. But with with LinkedIn rather, today, that's a great tool. It's a great way to stay in touch with all the social media, such as Facebook, for example. That's a great way to stay in touch. It's also a great way to find people. But LinkedIn, when I was at T3 before here, I was trying to find somebody from Segway to come run sales for me, and I went on LinkedIn and I found Monique Apter, who was the VP of Sales at Segway at the time, and she'd been there 10 years, and I hired her away. So don't, keep your network, healthy. Can't emphasize that enough.
The other question I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you have experienced this because you're highly successful, and that is failure and how to deal with failure and overcome challenges, especially in a sales field. Could you share some advice on that?
Yeah, I sure do. I will tell you, you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. And I had a chance to meet Jack Welch one time, the CEO of GE, and he talks about it a lot. He says, everybody looks at me as the greatest CEO in the history of GE, He says, but a lot of people don't realize during my 22 years as CEO, I bought and sold a bunch of companies, and a small fraction of those turned out to be good decisions. He says, but I learned a lot, and every time I bought one and we sold it, I learned more. So I'm glad you asked that, Jen, because here's something important. And I've seen people do this, and I pray that people don't do this, but they do. No matter how high you get in any company, don't ever let the job you have define you. Because I'm going to tell you what, the higher you go, the more people are going to take shots at you. And you know what? You may get fired at some point. But the old saying, when one door closes, another one opens. So learn from your mistakes, because those are your greatest opportunities. I'll give you an example. This year, 2014, we really thought the power sport channel here at Segway, meaning the dealers that sell ATVs, jet skis, snowmobiles, motorcycles, we really thought that that was a channel that could explode our volume in the Americas, particularly in the U.S. And it didn't turn out like we thought it would. And we learned some things. We learned some reasons why. We were successful by no means as much as we thought we would be. You know what? 2015 will be a much better year because we understand more. So don't take any failures you have. Don't ever take them personally, and learn from them, and you'll make better decisions.
You talk a lot about intrinsic qualities. Like, you've been a great leader. I mean, your track record, you're just always holding leadership positions. Do you want to talk about, kind of help me, tell me how to be a good leader? I don't know.
Well, understand we all get out of bed the same way, and we all go to sleep the same way. We all came to the world the same way, and we're all going to go out the same way. I grew up pretty much middle America, and I went to a college where I think it represented a good cross-section of America. And I think if you're going to lead people, they have to be able to relate to you and you to them. Don't ever lose touch with that. I've seen people that, they have such a high opinion of themselves that they fall out of touch with reality. If you kind of flip the traditional organization on its head and you put the base at the top and you write customer across the top, and this wasn't I learned this from Welch. He used to say, the closer you are to the customer, the more important your job is. And anybody else that is closer to the bottom, their job is to get all the things out of the way that help the people that are trying to serve the customer. Well, that means the CEO's at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So the CEO's job is really provide the direction, point to or make sure everybody understands the point on the horizon where we want to get to, how we're going to get there, and then make sure that, it's almost like conducting the orchestra. The CEO can't play all the instruments, but he or she wants to make sure that they sound really well together. And that's kind of what my job is here. So that's why I frequently meet with my staff, and we meet with people all the way down. We have key performance indicators at every level. I'll invite you guys to come Segway sometime. You'll see this over here. And everybody understands how we're measured. Everybody understands what we're trying to get to. We report our progress weekly. We adjust if we have to weekly. And as a result, it allows us to scale with some success. But it's not rocket science. Once you find a formula that works for you, it really doesn't matter if you're selling Segway personal transporters or something else.
That leads to my next question, and that's about Segway. When you think Segway, you think the personalized transportation. A friend of mine right in my neighborhood has one. I've ridden one. My 7-year-old daughter has ridden one, and they're really fun. And this is a chance for you to tell us and share with our audience a little bit about your company and the present and maybe the future of Segway. Our blog is we're pretty well known here in Burlington, and we might get a few views once this goes onto YouTube.
Wonderful. You're right. We're known, for the personal transporter that Dean came and launched quite a number of years ago. Primarily where we've sold most of them, about half of them have gone to tour operators, meaning, if you go to a city and you want to take a tour in something other than a tour bus or walking, we have about 1,000 tour operators, and a little more than half our business is there, and the other little less than half has been historically primarily law enforcement, private security. So you'll see a lot of officers at airports, or you'll see private security companies and shopping centers riding them. Yeah. We're working on some new applications to help grow the usage of the personal transporter. But we're expanding our business with new products. So last week I was in Cologne, Germany, and we showed for the first time our new line of electric bicycles. So we're going to be only selling them in Europe the first year in 2015. We'll bring them to the U.S. So you'll see a lot of our growth come from PT's more of the core business, our electric bicycles, and if you come here, you'll see it. We launched our first three-wheeled electric vehicle to compete with the company I was at before, called the SE3, and it looks awesome. In fact, they've already got them at Manchester Airport now.
Wow.
And it's a great-looking product. Very different, but it'll add about 20% to our top line and our bottom line next year.
So I guess I've noticed that as well. This is like, do you think it's an emerging market, electric bicycles, since we're all becoming very environmentally conscious and stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. It's very different between Europe and the U.S. In the U.S., people ride bicycles primarily for recreation. Mm-hmm. In Europe, they ride them for transportation. In fact, there's more bicycles in Amsterdam than there are cars. Just next year alone, just electric bicycles, there will be just a little under 550,000 electric bicycles sold in Germany, 65,000 just in Austria, over 300,000 sold in the Netherlands. It's a huge market over there, not nearly as big in the U.S. yet. And you know what's great about it is for guys a little older like me, you can't even tell they're electric. You pedal them along. Once it feels a little resistance, the motor kicks in and you go right up the hill. So they look identical to a regular bicycle. Many of them have the battery integrated into the frame so you don't even see it. And you can get it in a mountain bike, you can get it in a trekking bike, you can get it in a number of different ones.
Mm-hmm. We just lost our network connection, Rod, so just bear with us. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty. I think you just cut that.
Okay,
Alrighty,
we're back. Hammad just said no, because I think we want to take advantage of that invitation to come and visit Segway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright, awesome.
And the headquarters are located in...
We're less than a mile from where I saw you at T-Bones.
Okay, right. Okay.
Right down the street. Right down the street.
Yeah, so that's about 45 minutes without traffic from Burlington. So.
But you'll get to see 100% of our manufacturing is here in the same facility. So you'll actually see our manufacturing line. We'll introduce you to our engineers. We'll show you where we're working on, and you can see it all. We'll let you get on. You can ride our latest patrollers too.
Oh my God, that would be great. That would be so great. Yeah.
That'd be kind of a neat networking opportunity for some of these young guys who, Hammad he's quite humble, but any problem that has come through the door here, he's pretty much been able to solve, especially with hardware.
Yeah, Hammad, are you thinking about going the engineering route?
I really haven't picked like a specific field. I know I want to do something in technology. Like I know that's because I'm like I stay out with tech news like religiously. Like I don't know yet if it's software or hardware, but yeah, my focus is there so far. Yeah.
I know I can get you an interview for an internship with Dean Kamen.
Oh my God.
You're not going to believe this. Dean has 500 engineers that work for him on Commercial Street over here in Manchester. I saw him the other day. He's actually a little over 500 now, but the stuff he's working on it'd be a great opportunity.
Wow. That would be awesome. That would be just so great. Thank you. Yeah.
I was going to say you travel quite extensively, and it sounds like somebody in your field needs to be prepared to do that, to travel quite a bit. Yeah,
I'm actually writing a book. I spoke to the class I graduated from on April 15th because they asked me to come back and talk to an entrepreneurial studies class. And so I asked the professor, I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, well, tell them your story. I said, they don't want to hear my story. That's not what I want them to leave with. So I thought about it, and I said, if I was sitting in their chairs getting ready to graduate, what would I want to know that I didn't learn in college that could help me? So I came up with 25 chapters on things that you won't learn in high school, you won't learn in college, but you'll only learn after you get out. One of those 25 has really nothing to do with work as much as it does your personal life. Because as you get older, if you get involved in a relationship, you need to have the discussion so that you were at least on the same page, because many times opportunities require you to move. And if you're in a relationship where somebody says, you know what, I like it right here in Bedford, I'm never leaving, you better get on the same page before you get too serious, so you both know that at least, when something comes up, you're prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's any courses in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not.
It's pretty practical advice,
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll tell you one other one you should think about. This is another chapter. I interviewed a guy probably back in the late 80s, and he was interviewing with us for a job in Philadelphia, but I was working in L.A. And I said, well, why do you want to go to work for Epson? He said, because, I want to live in L.A. I said, the job's in Philadelphia. He said, but you understand, if I do a great job, I know I'm going to wind up at headquarters. And I never thought. I said, what a great point. So if where you live the last 15, 20 years of your career, or you better think about this, it's real important where you live. Where your kids grow up is probably where they're going to want to live. So if you're in California and your kids are growing up and you decide you want to retire in Texas, it's going to be hard to get your kids to come here. So think about, by the time you're 30, 35, if it's real important, think about, how can I get there? What company in the industry that I'm in might I be able to work for? If that's important to you. It's not important to everybody, but think about that.
All right.
What else?
I
think you might be a little overwhelmed.
Yeah, I'm just.
This is pretty cool.
I mean, this is just such a radical experience for me. I mean, I came to the States like 3 years ago, so it's great. Yeah.
Well,
questions.
I can't emphasize enough. I can tell you're a smart young person that's got a great future in front of them. What can really springboard your career, though, is don't pass those opportunities up to present in front of other people. That is an invaluable skill that some people have and some don't. I can tell you've already got it. Don't miss those opportunities. They helped me. I'm going to tell you what, I got a promotion one time in '87. It got me to California, and the way I found out about it, some guy had heard me speak when he was working at IBM, but he got the job as president at Epson, and he found out I was there, and he called me and hired me, and that's how I wound up in California.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Presentation I made at some, so I don't even know which one it was. I can't remember, but don't pass those up.
Well, you gave us 2 pointers from your book. When does the book come out? When is it?
I've still got to finish like 10 more chapters. So I'm learning all about publishing, though. It's interesting. You can actually self-publish online.
Oh yeah, through Amazon and many other. Yeah.
So.
Like Hammad here, this is his first year in the help desk program, and doing this show and facilitating these conversations, I think, is somewhat of a different experience for the students, especially because it's broadcasting live. And Hammad, when I presented the opportunity to him, he didn't pass it up. And this is our 15th show that we've done, and he's the first student out of the 14 previous episodes to actually start it. And we had a little bit of feedback in the very beginning, but I'm learning from that. That's my fault. But he's been really impressive to me. I hope he takes advantage of the offer from you to maybe pursue an internship experience with DECA and Dean Kamen, because I think that would be a pretty nice thing to put on a resume to start.
Yeah.
And I just cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us. And like I said it earlier, I'm so glad that I started talking to you back in August at T-Bones, because I didn't know who was sitting next to me, but I thought, I think this man is pretty important. So, but the fact that you're taking the time to do this just speaks volumes about, your character and who you are as a leader. So I just really want to thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Hopefully we will maybe coordinate a trip to come out, to come up north and see the facility in action. I think there's a lot of help desk students. I have 15 students in my program this semester, and they all have classes right now, and I think they're kind of envious that Hammad got the chance to talk to you. But they would just be, minds would be blown if we said, hey, guess what, we can take a trip up to Segway. So
wonderful.
Any other last comments?
I think.
Huge thanks.
Thank you so much just for coming with us, talking to our little thing here.
I think you might be getting a new LinkedIn request too from this.
Perfect. I'll look for it.
Alrighty.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rod. We'll be in touch.
Yep.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.